Is Obama a Muslim sympathizer, a Muslim wannabe, a Muslim that has been put in place to weaken America and all of its offices of leadership? And so by the time America finally wakes up to who he is, this caliphate will be so powerful, only a person like you or Ronald Reagan could stop it.
Well, you need to know that he is a Muslim. From a young age, he was indoctrinated in a madrasa school that was in place to train young boys to become imams. He was there for 5 years. This was in Indonesia. His application to the school said that he's an Indonesian citizen. We have this document. Every intelligence service in the world has this document. But it says very plainly he is an Indonesian citizen and that his religion is Islam. So that's who he is. We've been lied to from the very beginning. He is not a Christian. He's a practicing Islamist who practices the art of taqiyya, deception to enhance the possibility of Islam moving forward. And so that is his dedication. He has been bought and paid for by the Saudis, the Saudi royal family, and put in place to bring America down.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Whenever there is a danger on us or on any believer, we must practice taqiyya to save ourselves and any other believer from any possible harm.
Well, the success of the extremist ISIS forces is pulling the Obama administration deeper into the Syrian civil war. ISIS now holds territory across northern Syria, and now that it's a regional threat, Mr. Obama is reversing himself and asking Congress for $500 million to support moderate Syrian rebels who
And you may, for all I know, not be the moderate you pretend to be, because you may be engaging in taqiyya and be engaging in lying for the purpose of furthering your religion. Why should I believe you?
That there is taqiyya, which is deception and lies to advance Islam in non-Muslim societies.
Assalamu alaikum. Many other Americans have Muslims in their families or have lived in a Muslim majority country. I know because I am one of them. But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction. You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith. As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says, where we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation.
Desensitizing exercises all across the US, adding that, quote, "We're being prepared for mass civil unrest in major US cities. DoD will be expected to help when we're requested."
We will convey our deep appreciation for the Islamic faith, which has done so much over the centuries to shake the world.
My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm the Tactical Supervisor for El Paso SRT for Homeland Security Investigations. Well, we have our big vehicle out here. It's an armored vehicle. It's an MRAP vehicle. It's mine resistant, ambush protected. That's what it stands for. This is what we use to deliver our team to high-risk warrant services.
There's a shocking claim that Obama only wants military leaders who will fire on U.S. citizens. This comes from a very credited source. This man made a Facebook post yesterday, Dr. Jim Garrow, that he had been informed by a senior military leader that Obama has a new litmus test, and that litmus test is, will you fire on U.S. citizens or not? I have many buddies in the reserves, navies, marines. Many of them have told me the same thing. Matter of fact, quite a few of them have told me it was one of the very first questions they were even asked.
I'd like to speak directly to the people and leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their great and celebrated culture. Over many centuries, your art, your music, literature, and innovation have made the world a better and more beautiful place. We know that you are a great civilization, and your accomplishments have earned the respect of the United States and the world.
DHS supplier provides shooting targets of American gun owners. Paul Joseph Watson has this shocking story about how Law Enforcement Targets Incorporated is producing cardboard cutouts of, quote, non-traditional threats. Of course, this is on the heels of the federal government purchasing in excess of 2 billion bullets for non-law enforcement, non-lethal agencies. What the hell is going on? They're producing targets that say do not hesitate, of children, of pregnant women, of elderly men, in summary, of society's most vulnerable and typically most innocent citizens. You just cannot believe these cutouts, but they produce them, and you've really got to ask why, on the heels of Homeland Security and other agencies preparing to deal with the American people, openly stating they consider them to be potential extremists and the enemies in the event of an economic or civil unrest event, anything really they can use to justify a total, literal occupation of America through Homeland Security and related agencies. Now let's roll some of those incredible cardboard cutouts, again, that they say are going to be used by law enforcement who need to get over their hesitation factor for enemies they may encounter, quote, for the first time. And the obvious question is, why is there such a demand for these items, which again show nothing other than old ladies? There's a child with a gun, maybe 6 or 7 years old. There's a pregnant woman photographed in a nursery who's the target. Now, why is the officer there with the drawn gun in the nursery in the first place? Does he have a warrant? Has there been due process? Why does he consider this pregnant woman to be the enemy? Why are they planning to take down vulnerable and ordinary Americans? This is really bizarre, and it really should strike a nerve.
I also know civilization's debt to Islam. It was Islam at places like Uluzar that carried the light of learning through so many centuries, paving the way for Europe's Renaissance and Enlightenment.
Our next guest says there is no such thing as gun control, only people control. You just saw him giving a passionate speech at a rally in Maryland. Joining us now is former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. Dan, thanks a lot for joining us. What do you mean there's no such thing as gun control, only people control? Tell me what that means.
Tucker, this is larger ideological ploy by this administration. They're not being authentic with America, whether it's the sequester, healthcare, or the gun control issue. What they do is they manipulate an emotional crisis, a national emotional crisis, to further an ideological agenda which involves the evaporation, the slow disintegration of your civil rights, your liberties, your ability to live and let live. And it's a disturbing pattern that, frankly, is really starting to get under my skin.
I once read where you said that when you were in the business of protecting public figures, when you went to a place with gun control, you didn't feel safer.
Right. I mean, we have this Downtown Abbey class of politicians and bureaucrats who they understand as clear as day that gun control has absolute, which by the way is a myth, they're manipulating the language, gun control with air quotes, has no effect whatsoever on violence or the ability of wolves in our society to impart violence on you.
A two-tier system where privileged people, Mayor Bloomberg, for example, are surrounded by bodyguards with high-capacity magazines, and the rest of us have to make do with double-barrel shotguns. Is that adequate, do you think? I mean, is the average person safe with no firearm at home?
No, you're not. You know, Tucker, law-breaking folks, outlaws, are outlaws and lawbreakers for a reason. They don't care about the law. The law means nothing to them. In my 17 years in law enforcement, I never, ever arrested anyone or knew anyone who did on a gun crime who had the gun legally. So you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of this legislation? To disarm law-abiding American citizens, men, women, who just want to defend themselves and act within the scope of the law? You know, that Constitution means something, or it should. And apparently it doesn't to this administration.
Our understanding of how disease spreads and how it can be healed. And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran.
Now, there's a move apparently afoot to disarm returning veterans. Tell me what you know about that.
Yeah, I read this story. You know, this is absolutely incredible. You know, I have a friend, my friend Mark, who a wounded warrior, was literally severed in half. He had a grenade belt on and stepped on an IED, and he likes to hunt. And I thought to myself, so this man gave life and limb to protect our civil liberties, and then he comes home and with no judicial review whatsoever, a VA official, a bureaucrat, gets to determine if he's allowed to have his own civil rights back, his own right to self-protection. Does that not bother anybody? And this is, it's unfortunately epidemic, though, in this administration and this new political aristocracy that we live in.
Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace.
I'm struck by Obama's State Department emphatically stating that this was not an act of war. If this is not an act of war, what is an act of war? The Benghazi attack, the Fort Hood jihadi, the Times Square bomber. I mean, on and on we see there is a strategy, Rick. I don't buy that. He's not an honest president, so you can't take anything he says at face value. He had a strategy in Libya. He aligned with the jihad force in ousting a secular leader. No prince, I agree with you, but still enormously better than the jihad chaos that's taking place in Libya right now. He aligned with the jihad force in Egypt, even punishing the people of Egypt when 33 million took to the streets and threw off the Islamic tyranny of the Muslim Brotherhood. He aligned with the Islamic State, with ISIS, which, by the way, he can't even say. He calls it ISIL, he calls it ISIL, he calls it ISIS. I think it's to disarm and distract the American people, make them think it's 5 different groups. And nowhere can we say that it is in any way related to Islam, even though the name is the Islamic State. And so he did nothing with Foley, and so they've ratcheted it up. And now they have a female journalist that they're threatening to behead. And they will keep on ratcheting it up in order to get a reaction from this man. But it seems to me that under the 6 years that Obama has been president, we have seen the rise of jihadist forces across the Middle East and across Africa. And that is a strategy. It's an anti-freedom strategy. It's an anti-American strategy.
In the United States, rules on charitable giving have made it harder for Muslims to fulfill their religious obligation. That's why I'm committed to working with American Muslims to ensure that they can fulfill zakat. It is important for Western countries to avoid impeding Muslim citizens from practicing religion as they see fit. And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
But it is indeed a strategy. And we can't say that he's clueless. This is a man who was raised in a Muslim country from the ages of 6 to 11, went to Islamic school, was the #1 in his class in recitation of the Quran. He knows. He knows what's in the book, and so he's deceiving the American people. He's disarming the American people. Even today saying that they don't know that it was that American journalist Satlov. Well, what proof does he need? Does he need them to deliver the head to the front door of the White House? I ask you, Rick.
So you believe, I was not aware he was #1 in his class in reciting the Quran. Tell us about that, please.
Well, his fellow students said that he was the best in the class at Quran recitation in his Quranic class. So, you know, it's not like he's an apostate, wherein someone like Ibn Waraq, who was born and raised, of course, and I consider to be the greatest scholar, you know, in addressing this issue, born and raised in a Muslim country, and he rejects it. We don't see that at all, and we have to understand that the Muslim world does see President Obama as a Muslim, no matter what he says. that woman, remember that woman, Maryam Ibrahim? He was a woman who was married to a Christian, who was raised a Christian. Her mother was Christian. She went back to Sudan to visit family, and she was arrested. She was arrested for leaving Islam, and she was sentenced to death. Her legs were shackled. She was forced to give birth to a baby who was deformed because her father was a Muslim. Now, Obama's father was a Muslim, his stepfather was a Muslim, and he is perceived as a Muslim in the Muslim world, whether we like it or not.
We are no longer a Christian nation.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation.
The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story. There is a mosque in every state in our union, and over 1,200 mosques within our borders.
You know, one of the points I want to make is that if you actually took the number of Muslims, Americans, you know, we'd be one of the largest Muslim countries in the world.
Let there be no doubt, Islam is a part of America.
Did bow to the Muslim king, while he did not do it to the British Queen of England. And by bowing, he showed the world that I am subservient. I do bow down to you as a Muslim king, something no other president has done with Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king is his peer. He is not his subordinate in order to bow for him. And this is exactly what Obama did. Usually it is out of respect that someone would nod his head when bowing to royalty, and the ladies will give curtsy. But Obama went beyond what is required as a head of state and bowed to the Saudi king, and that's unacceptable. It sent the wrong symbol.
When you say it sends the wrong signal, what signal do you think it sends?
It sent a message that Islam is superior to any other master or king or president in the world, that an American president bound to a Muslim king. It also sent a message that terrorism and jihadism is giving Islam the respect it should have on the world stage, to the point that it made an American president, for the first time in history, bow to a Muslim king.
Whether the enemy media will address this or not, and they won't. I mean, he has made catastrophic blunders, I would have to say, in the cause of freedom across the world. We have lost whole swaths of the Middle East to the Islamic State. Now the richest jihadi group in the world, after seizing the Bank of Iraq's assets. And he calls them a JV team? It's an insult. It's contemptuous of the American intellect. It really is.
And what shocks me, Pamela, is that, yes, here and there are some criticisms from the mainstream media over Barack Obama, calling them a JV basketball team, over saying that we have no strategy in place yet, over the world. It's not that bad. It's just social media makes it appear worse. You see, here and there some minor chirps from the mainstream media, but I am stunned, befuddled. I don't know what word to use. Why there's not outrage, anger, loud voices from across the media of America saying this is wrong, and we're insulted.
Here, I just want to read a quote from the letter to vets from the executive branch. Quote, "A determination of incompetency will prohibit you from purchasing, possessing, receiving, or transporting a firearm or ammunition. If you knowingly violate any of these prohibitions, you'll be fined, imprisoned, or both pursuant to the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act." That is a very threatening letter.
Well, Tucker, I know you're familiar with the work of Thomas Sowell. He calls us the vision of the anointed. Here again, here's this bureaucrat, this letter you get from a class of bureaucrats, basically saying what you can and can't do while they do the exact opposite. I mean, we are living in this post-constitutional society right now where somehow they have sold to you, the American citizen, that it's moral, ethical, kind, or generous to disarm you while allowing others, our veterans as well, while allowing the wolves in our society, the criminals, to impart violence upon you at will. And they know that you won't be carrying a weapon in these strict gun control states, one of which I live in Maryland.
Now for those Christians who have eyes to see and ears to hear. This Islamist Muslim president who practices the art of lying to gain control of the world for the evil Islamist government and religion of Sharia, wants to disarm America so we can be completely taken over. This is the rise of the Antichrist. The two most important scriptures that are being used to deceive Christians today into following the Antichrist are Romans 13:1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. We as Christians are never to support and be followers of evil men. Remember, we know them by their fruits.
Be still and know that I am God.
Ephesians 5. Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children. The Word of God is filled with examples of Christians who refuse to obey evil men who thought they were above the authority of God Almighty. Number 2, the second scripture that Christians are being misled into following the Antichrist is Matthew 26:52. Then said Jesus unto him, Put up again thy sword into its place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Jesus is explaining if they took up swords against the soldiers, they would die by the swords. Jesus had a purpose in being taken, to be sacrificed for our sins, and he didn't want them to defend him from the soldiers. We know he is not referring to self-defense because in Luke 22:36, he tells them to arm themselves. Then said he unto them, But now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. There is a difference between murder and self-defense. In Romans 12:18, it says, And if it be possible, according to what is within you, make peace with every person, if it be possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Not one place in the Bible does it state that Christians are to lay down and let evil kill you. Study these verses. Study the surrounding verses and understand what was happening in the situation as Jesus made these statements. It doesn't matter what your pastors have been teaching you your entire life if what they've been teaching you is wrong.
Is Obama a Muslim sympathizer, a Muslim wannabe, a Muslim that has been put in place to weaken America and all of its offices of leadership? And so by the time America finally wakes up to who he is, this caliphate will be so powerful, only a person like you or Ronald Reagan could stop it.
Well, his dedication. He has been bought and paid for by the Saudis, the Saudi royal family, and put in place to bring America down.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Whenever there is a danger on us or on any believer, we must practice taqiyya to save ourselves and any other believer from any possible harm.
Well, the success of the extremist ISIS forces is pulling...
You need to know that he is a Muslim. From a young age, he was indoctrinated in a madrasa school that was in place to train young boys to become imams. He was there for 5 years. This was in Indonesia. His application to the school said that he's an Indonesian citizen. We have this document. Every intelligence service in the world has this document. But it says very plainly he is an Indonesian citizen and that his religion is Islam. So that's who he is. We've been lied to from the very beginning. He is not a Christian. He's a practicing Islamist who practices the art of taqiyya, deception to enhance the possibility of Islam moving forward. And so that is...
Non-Muslim societies.
Assalamu alaikum. Many other Americans have Muslims in their families or have lived in a Muslim majority country. I know because I am one of them. But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction.
You're absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith.
As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches
the Obama administration deeper into the Syrian civil war. ISIS now holds territory across northern Syria, and now that it's a regional threat, Mr. Obama is reversing himself and asking Congress for $500 million to support moderate Syrian rebels who...
And you may, for all I know, not be the moderate you pretend to be, because you may be engaging in taqiyya and be engaging in lying for the purpose of furthering your religion. Why should I believe you?
That there is taqiyya, which is deception and lies to advance Islam and not